Greetings, you beautiful souls. Welcome to the series premiere of Pathfinder at Night, The Gilded Cage. If you want to know a bit about what we're doing, I highly recommend you go watch our trailer and even the primer video to get a taste of what the channel's all about. Those of you who watched our previous videos and shared our hype for episode 1, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We worked hard to make a show we had fun with, and we can only hope you have just as much fun listening to it. Those of you who haven't seen the other videos, but decide, fuck it, you're gonna listen to this one first, well, we commend your bravery. Before we get into the show, I want to say a few things. First, we thank all of you for giving us a listen. Your support really means a lot to us, and we hope we can continue to bring you hours of entertainment. To that end, our first episode is split into 2 videos because we want to keep things manageable. When we first started recording, we were doing 3-hour sessions, but it turned into a logistical nightmare as far as scheduling and editing. Eventually, we trimmed it down, but the first couple episodes are still long enough that we want to split them up to keep things manageable. This won't affect our release schedule, since we'll be releasing both parts of the same episode at the same time. Secondly, we want to apologize for the erratic quality. When we first started recording, we were experimenting with ambient sounds, and as it turns out, those are easier to add in after the fact. Like, way easier. This first episode features a coastal town, and in our ambient track, there are the sounds of a bustling city. This apparently included someone doing their best Neil Peart impression using a hammer, and we didn't realize how intrusive it was at first. As the editor of the show, it was sheer agony on playback. Imagine trying to listen to people having a conversation while someone wails on your eardrum with an impact wrench. It was that bad. We eventually noticed that the hammering was a tad loud while recording and turned it down, but the damage was done. I left a brief taste of what it sounds like before I actually went in and turned it down. And I was left with 30 minutes of literally unusable content that I made my crew go re-record. Since we were still awful at sound work, the re-recording eventually had to be re-recorded thanks to dogs barking, the distracting hum of an air conditioner, and what I'm almost positive was the slow death of a lawnmower's entire drivetrain. So, since my players will salt me if I ask them for another take at recording, and I can't forcefully tie them to a chair and make them record, we have an episode that features both our initial terrible quality and our current not-so-terrible quality. So some cut-ins will be very obvious to the listening audience, but trust me, they were extremely necessary. Next thing I wanted to say is that we recorded this on Twitch, and you will hear us address the chat sometimes. So if you hear a less fantasy name like Rhubarb or Microwave, just know that those aren't characters, we're addressing the live audience. Who knows, if you come watch us when we record on Twitch, you might hear your name shouted out. Still, I thank you all for being here for the premiere episode, and without further ado, I present to you Episode 1, On the Steps of the Temple Prime.
I cannot stress how much that this is not a professional operation.
We're just a bunch of crazy kids.
We are professionally unprofessional. Hello, and welcome to the inaugural broadcast of Pathfinder After Dark, The Gilded Cage.
Yay!
And there was much rejoicing.
Although, even to my players, I gotta say, thank you all for being here. Episode 1, Campaign 1. Hope you're all excited to be here. Ground Zero. Can you believe it? You'll be able to tell your grandchildren that you were here when the cultural phenomenon took flight.
God, you're giving me secondhand embarrassment.
Might want to dial that Troy down from a 12 to a 2.
Are you saying that we're not going to be a zeitgeist juggernaut?
I mean, we might.
You have to understand, I live under a rock. I only emerged from my cave for this.
If you can't read the very stylized font there, we are playing Pathfinder, a rule set that branched off of an earlier version of D&D. Because we're even nerdier than the D&D folks. See, Pathfinder's a lot like D&D, except more math. You know, the part that everybody likes.
As the resident math major, hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to have any of that loser shit like advantage and disadvantage. You want to have 20 plus 2s.
There's still advantage and disadvantage. It's just called luck and unluck, bad luck. I don't know what it's called. Misfortune, I think it is.
Don't
Yeah.
forget all the fun bonuses that do and don't stack with each other, too.
Oh, yeah. I am your DM, every fat bearded guy ever.
Cool,
Are
cool.
It's,
you a fat bearded guy, Grub?
I am. It's contractually obligated that the DM be the fat bearded guy. So
Alrighty.
it's just D&D rules.
I think I need to rework my contract then.
Yeah.
Man, I've been imagining you as an earthworm in a cloak this whole time.
I mean, I can neither confirm nor deny that I am in fact an earthworm in a cloak.
Just like a floating skull with like bug mandibles.
No,
That one
I
gets you.
I have a human body that belongs to me. Yeah, so I am your DM. I am your dungeon master, DM Grub, and I figure we get started with the guy who decided to broadcast 5 nerds playing pretend to the world.
Yes.
Captain Jett, a man who needs no introduction. But go ahead.
Hi, I am Jett. That's all the introduction I have for you. I'm sorry.
Hey,
It's a good thing he doesn't
Hi.
need one because he doesn't have much.
Because he doesn't have
one
much
guy
of one,
with
ladies and gentlemen.
with the camera.
I will have a camera eventually, and as the contractual DM, I am obligated to have the biggest beard. So if any of you have beards, you'll have to shave.
So, you're like the
I
third
already
person
shaved.
individually trying to get me to shave my beard. I don't understand it.
That's completely Izzy.
I had a beard about a month ago, but I had to shave it for work because I work in a restaurant.
Oh, Jett, your stream's cutting off one of the quotes there. Zoom on out so that people can see our splash page
Oh yeah.
put together by our very own TC, aka That Cat. TC, go on and introduce yourself as our graphic designer.
Hello, I am TC. I am the graphic designer. I threw that together in Photoshop. I will probably throw other things together in Photoshop.
As the most artistically gifted of our ragtag little bunch.
And maybe someday I'll draw all of our characters, but that is not today.
That day is not today.
Let's go to the next guy, who's way more pepped up than any of us, Varnock.
Oh god, no, I don't know about that. I'm probably the shyest one here, least likely to have a camera at the end of the day. I will
Well, we're shoving you into the spotlight. Everyone say hi to Farn.
I will do my damnedest to
Hi,
snap multiple necks
Varn.
within 6 seconds by the end of this campaign, though, so we'll see whether or not that happens. That, or
You know.
I will accomplish a one punch. A one punch is on the list, just for you all.
And all right, that was Varnock. And last but not least, we have Robin Horn.
Hello, Robin
Take it
Horn.
away.
And that's all I have to say about that.
You blew your load. You buried the lead with I'm a meth major.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean,
I'd say it's your job that to keep our math in line, but you can't see my math.
Yeah, isn't that convenient?
Isn't that convenient?
Yep, that's a 34 to hit you. Really? How'd you get that? The math just works.
how the
It just works, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Rhubarb, for sharing the quotes that you can read, but we cannot, because
That's it.
I made the text color too dark.
merciful thing in the world, I think,
There we
is
go.
the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far.
Excellent.
The dramatic reading given by our very own Captain Jett. Round of applause, everybody.
Copyright strike.
No. I think Lovecraft's books are actually in public domain, I think.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I
yep.
downloaded those all for free for my Kindle ages ago.
Mm-hmm. That's right, you technically own Cthulhu.
Now Rhubarb just wants me to read the Terry Pratchett quote.
Just bite the hook, Jett. We know you want to.
Fine. Let there be goblin hordes. Let there be terrible environmental threats. Let there be giant mutated slugs, if you really must. Sorry, I'm not wearing my
Slag.
teeth, okay? Slugs, if you really must, but let there also be hope. It may be a grim, thin hope, an Arthurian sword at sunset, but let us know that we do not live in vain. Huzzah!
Huzzah! Adventure! Wait!
Adventure!
Adventure! Oh, wait!
And
Yeah.
Pretty good.
And that is our crew. They will be taking you into a world I have created, a completely homebrew, I don't know if I should brag about that, adventure just for you people. We are using a few of the alternative rule sets, namely background skills. You can look that up on D20 PFSRD if you play Pathfinder. And it just gives the characters a bit more skill points, gives them more things to roll on and to hopefully fail and for you all to laugh at them. We're also using a few automatic bonus progression rules that alter some of the magic items so that they have nothing but cool stuff to spend their money on instead of, I now roll it plus one more. Because, nothing's good for a show than increasing bonuses. Bigger math numbers. We want the magic item to do all the cool shit.
Indeed.
And in that vein, let's just jump into it, shall we?
Let's just jump into it.
Yeah.
A long, long time ago in a galaxy far away.
Wait, no, fine. Copyright. No, Disney,
Game.
I didn't mean it.
Yeah, Disney lawyers are knocking at your door right now.
We start our campaign. If this were a television show, we'd see the camera fade in from black over a vast, crystal-clear ocean. We pan up to see in the distance an island, featuring a dormant volcano. We start soaring towards the island as if one of the many seagulls winging over a bustling port city. As we pass over the docks, we focus on a half-orc unloading heavy crates from his ship, one of the many colorful citizens of Port Zenith. We glide over to an official-looking building, over a group of people that appear to be running drills in a training yard. The leader looks up to the sky and we can see his face, a handsome man with the Z emblem on his chest, clearly some kind of guard captain. We gain a bit of altitude to fly by a rookery where a small ratfolk ties a scroll to a raven's leg before letting it take wing. We dive back down to zip by a tan, bespectacled half-elf carrying a stack of books. Our flight seems to startle him a bit as he gives a small cry of surprise before stumbling under his burden, but we are away before we see him fall. Our flight comes to an end as we alight on the edge of a fountain in front of a large stone building. The stained glass and bell tower mark this as a temple, while the 8-pointed star above its door marks it as a temple to the 4 primes. We hear a single footstep as a lone figure steps into the garden of the temple prime. We look over and, TC, what does this figure look like?
Leone is a young, yet mature, pale-skinned changeling with a brown and green eye, with hair in a long braid. They are carrying with them something that isn't seen very often, a musket rifle slung over their shoulders.
You said changeling. Want to tell the folks at home what changeling means in this world?
Yes, in the context of Pathfinder, a changeling is a half-blooded child of a hag and a normal person. But for the context of D&D, they'd be called a hexblood, just to make that easier for people.
You said hexblood?
Yeah, that's what they call it in 5e.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yes, Pathfinder is gonna. They take a more classical approach to the whole changeling thing, where someone like a hag baby is just left in place of a normal baby, and they take the normal baby and do hag things with it.
Goddamn Fae.
That's right, Fae bullshit, as affectionately referred, or perhaps not so affectionately referred to. So you were one of the hag babies. You get different things based on what type of hag your mom was, correct?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Do you want to tell the folks at home what type of hag your mom was, or?
Yeah. Leone's mother was a blood hag, which are the ones where they either have the appearance of an old lady just out in the middle of the woods mind their own business in the day, and at night they wear the skin of lovely young ladies and seduce men.
Oh dear.
Be very creepy.
Yeah, that is awful. But yeah, so just bedecked in leather and carrying a rifle on top of the temple grounds. The camera will zoom in until all we see are Leone's eyes.
I believe the left eye is green and the right one is brown. But very normal heterochromia as opposed to the usual anime kind of thing you'd see.
It's a heterochromic, but a normal heterochromic.
Yes, a very usual sign of changelings. to denote their dual heritage. Leon also has a scar upon their face that goes from the bottom of their cheek to above their eyebrow. It's pretty big and noticeable.
For some reason, I thought the scar was across the bridge of the nose, but then I was just thinking of Squall.
No, I wish I was that cool and edgy.
Well, maybe there's still time. And so, as we focus on Leon's eyes, we hear a beat, and suddenly, the eyes we're looking at are much younger. We pan out to see a younger Leon on her stomach on the forest floor, holding her eyes up to the sights of her rifle. And we see her squeeze the trigger. TC, make an attack roll.
Shot goes pretty wide. Pretty wide.
Alas, we see the splintering of a tree shot near the target she was aiming for, and we hear a disappointed sigh as we pan up to see a rather salt and pepper, square-jawed. He is a human, wasn't he?
Yeah.
In a black robe, standing with his hands behind his back. He heaves his sigh and says, "We can be out here all night, Leon."
I'm more than willing to. I just gotta make the shots.
And he just grunts in response and says, "Again, this time, not so hard on the trigger."
Leo nods.
And we pull away from the duo, zooming out above the forest. We see where the forest ends is a large church. This one wooden with not so stained glass. It looks almost akin to a hunting lodge. On its grounds, we see a number of children being tended to by, well, I suppose the shorthand would be nuns, women in cowls and, heavy-looking robes. We get a quick shot of a half-orc, a pair of twins, and what seems to be a small wolf child, a humanoid wolf child being tended to by the nuns as we pan over the burnt, well, not burnt, but not like burnt by a fire. I mean like wood burning. The wood burnt sign that says, "Our honored father of the pride." We hear the same beat again, and we return to an older Leon's eyes looking at the Temple Prime. We hear her bootsteps along the cobbles as she approaches the building and goes inside. A short minute passes, and another figure steps foot into the garden of the Temple Prime. Jett, what does this person look like?
He's a sylph, which basically means he looks like a human being, but they have an affinity for certain elements. In particular, he has an affinity for the wind. This manifests in his short, silver-white hair and blue markings swirling around on his skin going down his arms and legs, which are the signs of his species. He's got blue eyes, he's 5'2", and he's 56 years old, but he's considered very young for his race. He does have a young, adventurous air about him, like he's eager to explore the world. He's wearing a simple leather armor, and he's carrying a rapier on his belt, though his weapon is unusual in that it is actually a spiral corkscrew-shaped rapier. And lastly, he has a raven fluttering about his shoulders.
And what is his name?
Zephyrus.
Zephyrus. That's funny because I saw that written and I thought it was Zephyrus. And so, this new figure appears before the Temple Prime. We hear the rush of unseen wind before our view takes to the air. We fly through fields of blue featuring white fluffy clouds before a silvery hull cuts through them. A ship sails along the air currents themselves, and as it passes our view, we see that the silver sheen highlights the lettering on its hull. Letters that read simply, "The Teacup." We get closer and we see that this ship's deck is full of a crew swabbing the deck on their hands and knees, keeping the whole vessel in pristine condition. We move closer until we see a little station set up on the prow of the ship. A telescope sits on a tripod that appears welded to the metal deck, and a small table juts from the railing itself. On top of this table is a teacup, the steaming contents of which seem to ripple only slightly, even amongst the rushing wind of the ship's flight. We see a man standing at the station, wearing what must have once been a shining, lacquered outfit. The jangling finery, having long since gone to tarnish, gives us an idea of forgotten valor. This man was once a proper military officer. His faded name tag reads, Captain Dunnigan. We see the captain turn from the prow and move about the deck of the ship, inspecting the crew as they go about their task. We see him stop in front of a familiar figure, a younger Zephyrus working at the metallic decking with a polishing rag, but he seems to be taking a break to catch his breath, sweat dripping down to mix with the polish. Captain Dunnigan leans down and says, "Keep that rag busy. I can't see myself yet."
Why don't you show me how it's done then?
Captain Dunnigan's expression instantly sours and responds in a voice akin to a low growl. "I'm sorry, my ears must be ringing from the wind. Was that back talk?"
What if it was? And he'd grab the mop that was nearby.
Captain Dunnigan's smile returns, standing up and bellowing to all nearby. "Would you look at that, boys? One of you maggots decided to find his salt," he says, his voice full of cruelty as he draws a corkscrew spiraled rapier. "If anyone else is thinking of finding theirs, well, let's just see what happens when you do." We see Zephyrus ready his mop defensively, and the captain makes a few thrusts towards him. It's quickly evident that this is a trained combatant fighting against an unarmed, unskilled opponent. Zephyrus is taken down easily, but he doesn't hesitate to spring back to his feet. Unfortunately for the young sylph, Captain Dunnigan is ready for him, and he's hammered back down to the deck. Again, Zephyrus gets up, and again he's knocked down. The young sylph has a bottomless well of spirit, but only a finite amount of blood. Eventually, he does not stand back up.
Ow.
Captain Dunnigan takes Zephyrus's polishing rag and cleans the sylph's blood off of his weapon. "Now clean all this up. You've made a mess."
Yes, Captain.
Captain Dunnigan walks away, satisfied that his point was made. He returns to the station on the prow, holding the bloody rag aloft. "Looks like we've got a red sky this morning," he calls out, his voice full of mirth. The crew responds with a forced laughter. Captain Dunnigan seems to take no notice of the disingenuous nature of the laughter, and places his eye up to the telescope. We see a ship reflected in the lens as it sails through the water below. The captain smiles, picks up his teacup, and says, "Sailors take warning." We pan down away from the ship to see older Zephyrus walking across the garden of the Temple Prime and enter the building. Sometime later, for the third time, we see someone else arrive in the gardens. Varnock, what does this person look like?
My monkey man here is Devesh, a Venara with golden-hued fur, something his village claims symbolizes great potential.
Ah. Want to tell us what a Venara is?
Well, the easiest way to describe it would be monkey folk, more or less like a human with fur and a prehensile tail.
Like Wukong.
Exactly. Less staff, though, and more fisticuffs. He's usually unarmed, but he does often tug at some hand wraps.
Ah, and you said his name was Devesh, right?
Yes, Devesh, god of gods.
Well, quite the title. All right, so we see Devesh start to walk across the grounds of the Temple Prime, and we pan to see his feet. Varn, does he wear shoes? Never.
He's got a climb speed as a monkey, you see. Hard to do that climbing with boots in the way.
Ah, I get you. Well, we see Devesh step out of frame, and then we hear a bloody, forceful impact. We see the same feet, though slightly different, stumble backwards before a younger Devesh ends up sprawled onto the ground. He quickly recovers to his feet and charges back towards his assailant, a bald woman in traveling robes, standing rather non-threateningly ahead of him. They seem to be in the middle of the woods somewhere along a well-traveled road. If this, from the description you gave me, if this woman were to be played by an actress, it'd be Tilda Swinton from Doctor Strange.
Yes, indeed. She is a human monk, you see, with timeless body, so I thought the appearance fit. And what better for a monk to be than bald, so you can't grapple them?
Well, her prowess as a monk is quickly evident as Devesh flips back over to her, and the two engage in a swift melee. As we see the two fight, we see that the human woman seems to be hardly trying at all, exerting very little effort or wasted movement, perhaps even moving slower on purpose to ensure that she blocks or parries at the last possible second, as if to tease her opponent, to frustrate him with the thought that maybe, if he'd just been a little faster, his blows would land. With an aggravated cry, Devesh is sent backwards again, this time rolling with his own momentum into a backflip. Only now we see his tail swipe out and curl around a nearby rock. He launches it forward as if to distract her before rushing forward once more. His mentor, this woman named Kaya, shows an inhuman burst of speed, catching the flung rock as it sails by her and kicking out with her foot towards her apprentice. Her kick lands solid, and as the wind leaves his breath, she shoots him a look that clearly says, "You should have known better." And with a shove, she sends her apprentice back into the dirt. She calmly walks forward and sets the rock on Devesh's chest.
What is the point of this? And all you do is throw me around and spout the occasional supposed wisdom.
The woman takes a deep breath and calmly says, "You wished to be taught, and so I must teach. You do want your true rematch after all, yes?" And then Kaya reaches out and offers her apprentice a hand up.
Which he would promptly ignore, rise on his own to brush himself off.
Kaya simply reacts to the disregard with a disappointed shake of her head, pulling her hand back. "That is enough sparring for now. You're only getting worked up, and that will not serve you. Perhaps we can move to a different manner of training." Kaya leads Devesh back to their camp, and in a short minute there is tea stewing on the fire. Kaya digs into her belongings and brings out a worn travel board.
And to his great disappointment, Devesh recognized it. Conflux, that boring old game. How was that meant to teach me anything?
Smiling a familiar smile that Kaya often employed in the full knowledge that it only served to annoy her pupil, simply gestures in front of her, inviting him to sit. "Play and find out." The two take turns choosing from the little worn statues that Kaya has available and setting the board to resemble miniature armies before they begin to play. Devesh seems to already know the basics of the game as he makes his moves almost instantaneously. Contrarily, Kaya's moves seem to be deliberately slow, and we see Devesh grow agitated. Kaya makes one final move and says, "Victory."
But what? I wasn't paying attention. Another round. And he'll just reset the board without waiting for her response.
Kaya sips her tea while Devesh resets the board, and the game continues much as it did the first time. During the second game, Kaya opts to refresh her tea, and as she pours, we see Devesh's tail moving behind her, sliding pieces around behind her back.
Alright, this time I think I've got a good plan.
Kaya returns to sit down, smiling at her apprentice as she nods and reaches out to continue the game. A few more turns are played, and Devesh's cocky smile slowly falls into a full-on scowl. He scans his pieces for the right move, but finding no victory forthcoming, despite or perhaps even because of his manipulation, he flips the board, sending pieces scattering. He starts to pace around the camp, muttering angrily.
Ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. Always picking on me, never giving me a chance. Teach. Ha! Ridiculous.
Kaya doesn't look at her apprentice and merely takes another sip before speaking aloud. "You are too aggressive, Devesh, in all things. You will be served to learn to slow down, to watch, and to wait. You do not always need to rush and make the first move, and as you see, often it betrays you. Let us play again, only this time you should pay closer attention to my pieces than to yours."
Fine.
And so, we return once again to find an older, more experienced, perhaps even a bit wiser Devesh, walking down the garden path of the Temple Prime.
Memories.
There is a short moment before we hear the footsteps on the cobblestones again, and we see another figure enter the temple grounds. Rob, what does this figure look like?
Well, she is a white-skinned tiefling that is dressed up with. She has bandoliers with various chemicals for various activities, and she has a very striking hair ornament that is woven into white strands of hair that are wrapped around the horns of her head.
You said her skin is white. Are we talking bone white or just pale flesh?
Bone white.
Oh, very white.
Very white.
From what you told me, her hair ornament is like a gold hairnet, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Very expensive, perhaps even the most expensive thing on her form, correct?
Now she's a little bit lower in funds than one might otherwise like.
It's the struggle. Low-level characters, I would never have enough money. But yes, so we see this figure walking along the grounds of the Temple Prime. Although, despite her boots, she's leaving some rather peculiar footprints.
Cloven hoofs.
That's right. Despite her boots, she leaves cloven hoof prints in her wake.
Following her would be a fairly large dog with straps on it, set up to hold further equipment. Following behind her, somewhat well trained.
Somewhat well trained. And what are the names of this dynamic duo?
So the tiefling goes by Rose Raza or Rose, and the dog is Cinder.
And as we see Rose and Cinder pass by us, we hear barking, although this is the barking of a much younger dog. There's a short blur as we pan over, and we arrive in the middle of a simple wooden thatch roof domicile. We see a young puppy, not quite Cinder, but we see a definitely younger Rose rushing after this errant puppy, barking through this cozy cottage home. Rose quickly scoops the puppy up and shushes it, worried that the barking would anger the grown-ups, until she hears a conversation over in the kitchen. And sneaking closer, the young Rose pushes open the kitchen door slightly and sees a woman. The family resemblance paints her to be Rose's mother, speaking to two elven men dressed in dark blue robes that feature silver stars, sitting across the table from Rose's mom. Rose's mother, in her hand, she takes a steaming cup, possibly tea, coffee, or maybe even something a bit stronger, as she raises the glass with shaking hands. Now that the door is open, we hear the conversation fully as the men say, "We are sorry, ma'am, but we were not able to convince the judge to be merciful on your husband, and his execution is set for 2 weeks from today." Rose's mom simply purses her lips together, unwilling to break into tears or sobs in the presence of these men, or perhaps in the presence of company at all, putting on a strong face as she takes this news grimly. There's simply a moment of silence before she answers, "And there is nothing you can do?" The men look at each other, their faces neutral, their indifference clearly apparent. They look back and say, "Well, perhaps there is one thing." This seems to spark a small mote of hope in Rose's mother as she looks back. She looks up to the men and says, "There is?" The two men let the silence linger for a minute too long before answering. "We can extend the date indefinitely. We can't change his sentence, but we can hold it off. Perhaps down the line, we'll be able to hold it off long enough that the judge will reconsider. But this does not come freely." Rose's mom, sort of building in determination, her hands shaking less, puts the cup back down on the table and says, "What must I do?" as she affixes them with a hard stare. The men produce a golden hair chain, the same one we saw adorning Rose on the grounds of the Temple Prime, and set it on the table. The men say, "Give this to your daughter, and we will ensure that your husband does not face the headsman or the noose." Rose's mom looks confused for a moment. The cottage doesn't seem to bear the markings of someone used to this sort of finery, and her suspicious look clearly denotes that she doesn't think that they're serious, that this is all she has to do. And she simply looks at them and says, "Why?" The two men answer sternly and curtly, "This will set your daughter on the path of her destiny. All you have to do is give it to her, and destiny will fold itself out. You are free to get it taken to any wizard or caster or appraiser. There is no curse, there is no magic. It is simply a fine golden chain. We aren't magically compelling or cursing your family. We think that our work so far has proven us to be benevolent. The only thing it is not a simple request, but do not sell this. Do not give it to anyone but your daughter. If word reaches us that this hair chain has been sold for money, or, sold to someone else, their words trail off, and both of them in unison put a finger to their necks and mime a slicing motion. Still with a suspicious look, Rose's mother reaches out to grab the hair chain and pull it back, and she says, "Very well, I'll do this." The two men stand up and simply say, "Then our business is concluded. We'll be seeing you, ma'am." And they leave, breezing past the spying Rose Raza as she retreats to a corner to act as if she were not listening in to the conversation. And then we pan away to return to the Temple Prime, seeing the sun glinting off of the fine hair chain as Rose herself enters the Temple Prime.
All right, and so the four of you have entered the Temple Prime. This is one of many temples in Port Zenith dedicated to the Prime Archons. And, okay, wow, that guy's going ham on the hammer in Sirenscape. Let me turn him down. Perhaps even more striking than the sign of the man in prime robes kneeling at the altar is perhaps the thing floating beside him, which appears to be a human eyeball encased within a flat metal disc.
Human eyeballs sure have gotten bigger lately.
I see.
This is a tiny creature. I know the token takes up like a medium-sized space, but this is a tiny creature. And does anyone have knowledge arcana?
I think I do. Hold on.
What are knowledges?
Who?
Apes together.
Not with that roll, Jesus. I got a
great
friggin' 7
showing.
bonus, and
Ooh,
there we go. First real roll of the session. 4. Woohoo!
4.
Second,
And that is a fail. You
Not
don't
surprised.
you don't know what this creature is.
The only reason I didn't dump intelligence is because I didn't want to lose my already tiny skill points.
Does anyone else have Arcana? Or am I the only one in the group?
You might be the only one.
Oh, fuck.
I've got nobility and local.
Oh dear, we're manlets and brainlets. Oh no.
Oh, man.
Oh god.
who needs a brain? When you
I mean, I got a brain. It's just I just really rolled poorly on this
It's gonna
one.
be a bad time when we have to start making will saves.
All right. Well,
Oh, yeah, will
how
saves
do
are
you
gonna be
guys like this map?
terrible.
By the way, I do got to take a moment to satisfy an attribution clause.
Oh?
It's
and,
really good. What'd you make it in?
No, I didn't make it. This map brought to you by 2-Minute Tabletop.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those
Oh.
guys.
I don't
Yep,
know what that
they
is.
they do good work. 2MinuteTabletop.com. I have to say that legally.
I thought about
Oh.
making my token with those guys like a while
Oh.
ago. They're pretty good.
Pretty good to me. Lines up nice.
Yeah, that's actually 2 pieces right there. So yeah, if any of you guys out there want to DM for yourselves, 2-Minute Tabletop. It's a good resource, and it saves me from drawing a map because I have no artistic talent whatsoever.
Oh yeah.
It takes me forever to do a map. I can do a good one, but it just takes forever.
On that note, I would like to point out that some of us did make our characters using the Reroll app or
Mhm.
website.
Yes.
Because we do not have any kind of artistic inclinations whatsoever. So, these basic ass sprites down here were made with Reroll.
And I actually did Varn's token in Hero Forge.
Yes, Hero Forge
was
is another good one
wondering
to
about that.
just to actually like visualize a character. I use that a lot.
can also
buy their
3D print your
STLs.
models.
Right, yeah, buy their STLs, the 3D print models.
And I'm not going to say where my token comes from because they charged me for a watermarked version. I'm so glad Shrunk It Down you can't see the watermarks because fuck them.
Oh, okay. Well, then I won't bother with doing what I'm doing right now.
Oh yeah, you can kinda see the so you can kind of see the watermarks on it.
I didn't see nothing. I promise.
Yep, I know nothing.
Don't hurt me.
It out.
Yeah, no, it's
What
awful.
are we talking
like I said.
about? Who are you?
7 worms in a fucking coat, man. I'm
The
telling you.
number gets bigger every time.
Yeah, no, every time we talk about it, now, next thing you know, it'll be 9.
Our party enters the Temple Prime, one of many temples in Isla Prima, to the Prime Gods. And you walk in to find a priest of the Prime. The person who summoned you here, he is known as Prefect Meyer. And he is standing by this eyeball disc. He stands up and reaches out to cup some water from the altar. And he leans back to drip it down his face. Before turning to you, and he says, "Welcome.
Hi.
I trust you all had an easy time getting here."
The directions were pretty simple.
Easy enough.
We made it.
I mean, we're obviously here, aren't we?
It's like, well,
Oh,
I've heard good things about you. From your mentors, they say that you're the brightest upcoming stars that we have.
sure as hell what he ain't what he told me.
Indeed.
This causes Prefect Meyer to smile a bit. A smile that says that he knows just how some of the mentors can be.
Grumble rematch someday.
Mine
Damn
was
weasel.
pretty aloof.
And he says, "I do apologize for the circumstances. I know that you have been waiting for your confirmation and induction into the Black Gambit Society. Unfortunately, all confirmations have been placed on hold following the recent unpleasantness."
Of course it has.
How much do we know of this unpleasantness?
You would know pretty much the general gist. Do you have like knowledge local?
I think
I do.
Okay.
Uh,
Go ahead and roll knowledge local.
I have a point into it.
Okay, then you can roll it.
Last go.
I wish monks got knowledge local.
Yeah, I went ahead and put a point into it because knowledge local comes up so friggin' often. It's,
Massive
and I have a
All
decent
right.
intelligence score.
Zephyrus, you definitely know what he's talking about. Rose, you kind of have an idea. Maybe you're just a little bit more out of touch, but you've definitely at least heard of what's going on. And what he refers to as the late unpleasantness refers to what is being called in certain circles the Night of Screams. As there was a incident in the main temple to Lady Ariel, one of the 4 primes.
Not the Little Mermaid.
No, Lady Ariel. She is the the avenging sort of goddess. She's basically an angel with a flaming sword and holy glowing wings, and she is the god of justice, revenge, fire, glory. This is this is one of the temple primes because these are temples to the prime 4, the 4 as 1 kind of deal. But each of the prime gods have a temple dedicated just to them, and Lady Ariel is one of the prime gods that her temple had an incident, and this incident involved something happened about 2 weeks ago where a lot of Lady Ariel's priests died. A lot of the clergy just were shredded. Something got loose, killed a bunch of them, and nobody is talking about what happened, what that was, or if it was defeated or if it escaped. It's being very hush-hush. The people in the know aren't telling. So
Yeah,
that
it's not
is
usually something you want to share.
yeah, so that is what Prefect Meyer is saying when he says the late or the most recent unpleasantness.
So that's one way to describe it.
And he continues to explain, it is unfortunate that while we deal with this crisis, all confirmations are on hold, unfortunately, due to our reduction in number.
I think
Well-
that'd be more reason to fill the ranks back up.
I think that's what's
Correct.
happening. I think we're unofficial.
I was about to say,
Whereas
the easiest way to
we-
solve that would just, I don't know.
We currently can't spare any prefects to conduct a confirmation. We must bolster our numbers, especially with the confluence so close at hand. We are a mere month away from the beginning of the next confluence. And we of the Black Gambit Society must be ready.
Well, suppose we could always just speed it along, improve our quality by going to deal with whatever this is.
He kind of waves his hand dismissively. We couldn't send acolytes to deal with something so close to our heart. This is a matter that we are entrusting to only our most trusted and proven field agents.
Well, glad to see where we stand in your regard.
Well, how do we go about proving ourselves then? I have a promise to keep.
And that is why I've brought you here today. We have a faithful observer, he says while gesturing towards the floating eye disc next to him.
Those IA guys, I tell you, they're always a pain.
Yes, they are.
At least it's not
Good.
HR.
And
They made an HR joke.
I'll say this for the I'll say this for our audience. You four know what the Black Gambit Society is. The Black Gambit Society is a group of people dedicated to protecting the world from extraplanar threats. You are an apolitical, national sect of people who wander the globe and fight against extraplanar influence. Like cultists, aliens, eldritch horrors, and elder gods.
Guys, I get to punch Cthulhu.
Did you just punch Cthulhu?
Gonna put Haster in a headlock.
There you go.
All right.
No, you need C4 in a hockey rink to deal with Haster.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Old Man Henderson. That is a deep reference. Matrix says he likes their mandate. Yes, they know where tieflings come from. Their sites are actually further than hell or the abyss.
Let me allow that.
I believe in the base Pathfinder
Oh, barn
setting. The thing we're looking at would be called the Dark Tapestry.
Oh, it's still called the Dark Tapestry. It is
Oh, well, there you go.
the space between the stars. Yeah, we're not that separate from still a Pathfinder setting, so we still have all the important stuff from Galarian.
Galarian's more like a stone's throw over that way.
Yeah, it's a similar reality. All right, so I lost my train of thought. Yeah, Prefect Meyer, he gestures to this floating eye disc, and he says, "I will be sending this observer on towards your next with you to observe your next mission. We feel that you should be tested, but seeing as how we don't have any prefects available to perform your confirmation, we will at least send along a trusted observer. This being cannot lie. It will record everything that you do. Once your task is complete, then it will return to us, and we will review how you have acted, and if we deem that your performance meets the standards of the society, then you will be given full induction as members."
Do we get a copy at the end?
For review purposes.
Sure.
No, you don't get one.
Ah. Oh well.
Yeah. When you say everything, do you mean everything we do?
Everything it sees.
Good. Good to know.
Don't be mistaken. Prefect Meyer continues. This being has next to no combat capabilities, so if you expect it to help, well, it won't. So don't be taking any unnecessary risk that you wouldn't otherwise take.
Do you expect us to protect it?
I don't believe it will be in need of protecting. It is made of firm materials, and it would take sizable damage to crack it.
All it needs to do is sit back and watch me handle things.
Watch us handle things.
Us handle things.
Certainly, if you get
Yes.
there in time.
Nerve of some people, I tell you.
I'm
Yeah.
more than willing to stop posturing and take our lovely
Yeah.
supervisor out for a stroll.
I would like to level up from posturing to posing.
Oh no, he's a JoJo character.
Oh god.
Menacing.
Yo, wait, that's a good point. Can I use the eyeball thing as a frisbee?
Well, you could try to.
Oh, because it's a ball.
In the words of every DM ever, you could try.
You can certainly try.
And it is going to float over and just hover, staring at you.
And you said that you had a mission for us.
Yes. Have any of you heard of Breakwater Harbor?
That'd be another knowledge local check.
It would be local or history.
Do I have history?
Only I had a few more
I do
points.
not. Knowledge. Local. There we go. That's better.
Trait that gives me a bonus to nature, but I don't have a point in nature, so I still can't roll.
Another
Womp
good
womp.
roll.
All right. So, yeah, Rose and Zeph, you both have heard of Breakwater Harbor. Breakwater Harbor was the initial spot for Isla Prima's capital. However, in the history of Isla Prima, it was destroyed, and the people sort of packed up and moved and founded Port Zenith.
I mean, they didn't just build it up and have it sink into the swamp again.
It didn't sink into the swamp. It was destroyed by something. You think you remember that it was a hurricane, or maybe an eruption from the volcano, but some sort of cataclysm racked it and just completely destroyed it.
How long ago would that have been?
Decades. This was not recent history, and the only reason you know that is because some of the buildings are still standing and some of these ships are still floating in the harbor, and it's known as a sort of abandoned ghost town where, a feat of bravery is to go stay the night in Breakwater Harbor.
With the manga standby test of courage.
Essentially, yes. People do it on a dare. People do it, as a sort of display. Again, it's not really patrolled because there's nothing there, or there's nothing of import there. There are warnings to stay away because it is an abandoned harbor, so things can sort of take residence there. So nobody is encouraged to go there alone. They're saying, don't go there alone. Don't stay there after dark. Generic warnings to avoid the place. However, it is even more subtly known as a place where you can get away privately.
Like make out place kind of stuff, or
Essentially, yes.
Gotcha.
Great. Children's fairy tales and horny teenagers.
It's amazing how often the two go together.
Yep.
It's worrying.
It is a place known for perhaps even more than its haunted, abandoned nature, but for its secret rendezvous.
I have the strangest feeling I'm gonna have to knock an innocent person out today.
As long as you just knock them out.
Well, where I'm gonna start.
And then if they're innocent, leave them alone after that.
Well, yeah, I thought that was implied.
Just checking. You never know.
So do you Y'all know where we're going.
So we're going to Breakwater Harbor. So we
Okay.
heard of this makeout spot. What do we need to do there?
Wait, is that what that is?
What?
People do that?
What were you, raised under a rock?
I was raised by a priest.
That's the same thing.
Oh dear.
Wow.
There's
Rude.
Prefect Meyer continues. I see you tell him that you've heard of Breakwater Harbor, and he continues. And he'll say, "Within the harbor is the derelict remains of the Shark's Tooth, once a capital flagship for the forces of the Black Gambit Society. Now little more than a rotting derelict. This is not the first time we've had to drive up our numbers in the face of a tragedy. And so, aboard the Shark's Tooth is our backup.
You're calling for backup.
No, it is our backup confirmation test.
Oh.
In the captain's quarters of the Shark's Tooth, there is a magical orb. This orb will allow you to gaze into certain points of memory, navigate the dangers of Breakwater Harbor, board the Shark's Tooth derelict, go to the captain's quarters, and touch the orb of memory."
That's it?
You don't want us to bring it back? Just touch it?
Oh, do not, under no circumstances are you to bring it back.
We just have to touch it.
If you bring it back, then nobody else can have their confirmation.
How do you know that we've touched it?
I assume the observer will tell them.
The eye will know, and you will know.
If that's enough for you, okay. I just thought we had to bring it back for a minute, that's all.
That's the usual RPG quest, right?
Yeah.
I need some lettuce for my salad. Please go into this rat-infested garden and pull them out.
Why a confirmation requires another person?
I imagine this is meant to be a test, so I imagine the person... Ordinarily, they would just have someone throw some kind of challenge at us.
Did you have a question, Farn?
Oh no, I was muttering that in character.
No.
This seems... The whole needing a person to escort us when they could just use the eye for the confirmation seems pointless.
Yeah, and I was responding to that as in character.
Oh, that having a person escort you?
Yeah.
Well, that's the person, normally, there would be a person to, actually, this is not what everyone goes through.
Right.
It's, normally there would be, like, an actual test and an officiator, but they don't have one of those, so now they're just like, go touch this thing in this dangerous area, and we're going to send this eye with you to make sure you did it.
Like normally there's a proctored test, but they can't afford any proctored, so they're just going to send us with a video camera to do something.
No time for the Ganning exams.
Yeah, and he'll have explained that, this is kind of their backup test.
You really need to have a better layer of backup.
God, I'll snap. I'll be angry if someone sends us on a snipe
You don't
hunt.
have to think we're just screwing around. Yeah, it's actually just a...
I know what a snipe hunt is.
Yeah.
It's just one of those hollow projectors on a stick. Well, let's get going.
Woods with a net, and you catch these birds that live in bushes.
Yep, I know what a snipe hunt is. Classic. Did you have any questions for Mr. Meyer?
What exactly will this memory thing do?
It will allow you to gaze into the past at certain points where the worlds.
Do we have a time limit?
I'm guessing the month before this whole thing kicks off.
It's a fair assumption, I suppose.
But let's not take this long. How far is it out of character? How far is it to Cold Harbor, Breakwater Harbor? With my knowledge.
It's the better part of a day's journey. Like you could walk there.
Yep.
It's it's overland. Like I say, it's just up the coast.
Well then, I suppose we might as well get moving.
Yes.
All right.
Let's go already.
So, no questions for Meyer, then? No more? All right.